So thanks for joining us all today. I thought we could begin with asking Vesser a little bit about his work and then moving on to Dr. Marwan to explore kind of some of the technical aspects. But just to jump right in, your artwork, Visa, called Fork and Flip, features a Bitcoin symbol flanked by a bull to the left, presumably referencing a bull run, and a bear to the right, so presumably a bear run. What was the message in this piece of art, and what is it about the crypto space and NFTs in particular that caught your fascination?
Okay, before I get to the Fork and Flip piece, brings back a lot of memories. I'll go a little bit back in my history, which was around, I was a filmmaker before I was a contemporary artist. I started contemporary art at my own process around 2008. And before then I ran a film production company for about a decade. And I made some documentaries, and I came across some documentaries on how the monetary system works at around 2006 or so. And I realized that this was quite an important issue for humanity to solve, and it would lead to the kinds of polarization that we see in society altogether, unless if we do fix it. And this is now 15 years on, and a lot of these effects that it was easy to see that would be a knock-on effect on the system itself if we don't upgrade it to a relative degree, are now with us. And to begin with, I didn't see how I could monetize easily my digital artworks, because I invented this process where I started body painting on people and photographing my paintings and nature and everything. And I put it all together that resulted into these museum grade, high resolution digital files. And then I made them into physical representations. But of course, when crypto fully hit me in early stage of 2017, I realized that it's not only a solution for the monetary system crisis and its evolution as a positive direction towards that, but it was also a solution for about 350 digital original art pieces that I'd been doing as a way to monetize and start to play around with smart contracts and making all of these interesting things. And because of my background in understanding the monetary system and getting more and more into the crypto space, I started understanding the relevance of some things in finance. They became a language that I could all of a sudden start to speak. And at that time, we were at the cusp of the first, well, not the first, but the 2017 bull run of Bitcoin and everything that was happening with it. So with this art piece, the Fork and Flip, what I captured were these two opposing forces, and how Ethereum was being discussed as in potentially flipping Bitcoin in its market cap value. And it was the first fork of Bitcoin as well into what Roger Ver was doing. And all of these interesting things were really at a heightened stage. And people were saying that maybe BTC tanks altogether. And it was really quite a tumultuous time. And I sort of hit the ground running coming into crypto at that point. And that piece in particular had a privilege of being in the first Forbes article about the whole crypto art movement to begin with by Rachel Wolfson. And it was, I believe that was January 2019 or something like that. But I still haven't even minted that original as an NFT because it's waiting for the correct or the collector who will truly appreciate the value of a new art movement that is not only an art movement, but stops the previous period of what I call fiat art for the past 50 years. So the sum of it eventually, when it's going to be collected, is going to be someone who knows how to appreciate it, but also will be able to appreciate it in the kind of historic value price that it will eventually fetch, I hope.
So yeah, I was reading some of your work earlier today, and it is interesting because on the one hand, you're talking about finance and crypto and the market, which is unheard of for a lot of artists. You know, you're not meant to talk about that stuff. It's one of the conventions of art. But on the other hand, you've got some pretty strong criticisms of the existing art establishment. But I wanted to move over to Dr. Marwan for our viewers and everyone involved as well, to quickly ask, Dr. Marwan, what is a non-fungible token? And why do you think this idea of art as an asset on the blockchain is becoming discussed or fashionable? And do you think it's something that is legitimate? Or do you think there are still a lot of questions and challenges there?
So let's start with the definition. So a non-fungible token is a unit of account where you can actually, it's like a certificate of ownership of a unique piece of art or a unique anything. It could be a diamond, could be a car, could be a physical thing, a representation of ownership of a physical thing. And in the mainstream right now, what we see is actually an ownership of a piece of digital art. This is, it's called non-fungible. It is actually a definition to distinguish it from fungible tokens. Fungible tokens are tokens used to represent a unit in the crypto world, usually to represent ownership of a unit. For example, one Ethereum is one Ethereum, no matter how you look at it, it's indistinguishable from another Ethereum token, for example. Where Ethereum tokens can be divided into, multiple, subunits, like a quarter of an Ethereum token or 0.135. A non-fungible token is a one solid unit. You cannot, divide it up into separate units. Like you cannot buy half a piece of art. You either buy the whole piece of art or not. You cannot buy a quarter of or 3.5% of a diamond or a car or some other thing. That is not a complete unit. With that, non-fungible tokens are also programmable. So the transfer of ownership happens through what is called a smart contract. So if you buy it, you actually receive the actual full token and changes the ownership to your wallet or you have control over it and you can send it to somebody else as well, just like you would a digital asset. So that ownership comes with a lot of other features as well. With NFTs, you can also, the artist, for example, if he develops a piece of art that's tied to a smart contract, when that piece of art is sold, he gets the benefit of that value of the art being sold. Not only the first time, but it can be actually programmed where he gets dividends on each subsequent sale. And that can be programmed anyway that the artist sees that will benefit him, and also the buyer and subsequent buyers as well. So there's a lot of technical aspects tied to it, and that's where the confusion happens. To make matters even worse or better, you can not only have one piece of art, you can, as an artist, have the freedom to create one-offs, which are a single piece of art that's not duplicatable. Or you can have an issue or a drop of, for example, and these are the terms that are used in the NFT world. An issue of, for example, 50 or 100 or limited run, as they refer to in the real world, or 1 of 20 or 1 of 50. And these are also, again, digitally scarce. You can only have 50, you cannot have 51, for example, or 52 as you please. You cannot copy them because they're tied to this smart contract that is associated with that piece of art. So with that, of course, it's a good segue to come to talk to Noor, I think, about the legal aspect. And we have to distinguish the two parts here. One is what is technically enforceable and what is a law of ownership and what that entails when it comes to NFTs. So technically, the person who owns the private key of the wallet that is the artist assigned to is the owner, but legally, that's a different story. And when it comes to IP, they don't own, and this is where it actually gets confusing, and I leave it to Noor to explain the IP issues related to that as well. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a teaser of what is the technical aspect. And of course, I can explain more about the technical side if there's any more questions, either from the legal side or somebody from the audience.
I'm sure there will be. Thanks for that technical overview, Dr. Marwan. And of course, to anyone viewing in, please feel free to chip in and ask questions. We'll try and put your questions forward to the panel on a rolling basis. So Noor, I know we've discussed this in the past on Clubhouse. What do you think about the legality of some of this, and also kind of culturally and in terms of the art market? I mean, are NFTs all the rage, or are there some significant, caveats and questions that need to be asked?
Okay, thanks for inviting me, John, and thanks, and it's great to meet everybody. I'm, as John said, a lawyer at Armstrong Teasdale in London. the funny thing is, my firm is an IP specialist firm, but I am not an IP lawyer, so I cannot comment on any IP related aspects of this. I can comment on the art world, and I can comment on as being an art lawyer and what it means to be a traditional art lawyer. And put it this way, I'm already at the best of times a very tech unsavvy person. It was hard enough just to get my computers to work for this Zoom, even though we've been using Zoom for a year. So I have been interested in getting my head around the value and the appreciation side of it. And Besa, thank you for explaining the art. You mentioned a very important word, appreciation. And in the art world, I come from the traditional art world where you go to the auction, you see a physical, Van Gogh, you bid for it and you get to appreciate it on your wall. So this is the concept. This is one part of the concept I would like to understand a bit more about in terms of how does that appreciation side work for NFTs. I mean, I think from the legality side, it shouldn't be too difficult in the sense it makes things easier. You own one token, this is registered, the blockchain. I mean, it makes certain things easier. Hopefully fraud is reduced through this decentralized, non-changeable system, which has other issues about the fact it's non-changeable. I'm not going to go into whether you authenticate a piece and then the underlying piece suddenly gets re-authenticated, and then what do? You've already recorded it, on the blockchain. So these are quite difficult, complex legal issues. I want to just talk about the concept. I mean, is it art? As John said, what are we buying? And I think I just want to, and I don't know if anybody has seen this. This was going around and I thought it was very, very smart and quite kind of captured the whole thing. So I'm going to read it out. It was something I saw that was described by a barrister on LinkedIn as probably the best explanation of NFTs I've seen all year. He says, so this guy is called Jacob Galapagos. He says, imagine if you went up to the Mona Lisa and you were like, I'd like to own this. And someone nearby said, give me $65 million and I'll burn down an unspecified amount of the Amazon rainforest in order to give you a receipt of purchase. So you paid them and you went, and they went, here's your receipt, thank you for your purchase. And went to an unmarked supply closet in the back of the museum and posted a handmade label inside behind the brooms that said, Mona Lisa, currently owned by Jacob Galapagos. So if anyone wants to know who owns it, they'd have to find that specific closet in that specific hallway and look behind the right brooms. And you went, oh, great, can I take the Mona Lisa home now? And they said, oh God, no, are you stupid? You only bought the receipt that says you own it. You didn't actually buy the Mona Lisa itself. You can't take the real Mona Lisa home, you idiot. You can take this though. And they give you a replica print in a cardboard tube that's sold in the gift shop. So this is kind of what I understood to be what we are buying, and in terms of like, this is what our right is to the underlying asset which we cannot appreciate. So that's one thing. And and I leave comments here, but I do have a larger issue which I can get to in a sec, about the whole crypto world. And it's
allow me to defend this afterwards, though.
Well, no, go. If you want to, you can. I mean, I know that you may, as John said, we don't want to say necessarily keep you. I could be here forever to talk about this concept. So please do chip in if you have a thought. I mean, I will.
So I think whoever made that comment and made that analogy tried to oversimplify it. So the NFTs right now, imagine the internet in the early days. So if somebody told you the internet is like the whole Library of Congress, just one click away, it's an oversimplification what the internet is. Internet is not that. NFTs are exactly not a receipt in a closet somewhere behind some brooms in the Louvre, but it is an oversimplification. It is not, does not mean that it's actually false. It just means it's an oversimplification what the true value of NFTs are. And we have to understand that also we are very early in the NFT space. Yeah. There's access to market that NFT creates that people have not even thought about. There are access to even physical items that people would not be able to buy as we speak right now, but that will have the ability to buy and truly own that piece of art or piece of actual physical item in the future using NFTs. And even with digital arts right now, even though that receipt only shows the ownership of that digital art, in the future, there's going to be actually the piece of art and experiences and ticketing and other stuff tied to it that will make that ownership come with privileges and come with things that are not seen as a flat piece of digital art on the screen of a computer. So we are in the very early stages. We are, I think, maybe a year or so into NFTs, where maturity takes time. It takes at least 3 years for this to actually develop to fully working smart code contract that has much, much more value than just being owning a piece of art that's flat on the screen that anybody can copy and do a screen capture of.
Yeah, so I know you come back to value, and I don't doubt that there is value. I just think I wonder if it's the kind of value that the people who I am used to working with in the art world want to, because two camps. Yep. There's the tech
yeah,
collectors.
Exactly.
And I'll happily go into the.
We'll move that forward to Vesa, but I think that's why this is such an interesting conversation because we have Noor from the art world, the Christie's auction, traditional law world, and then we have the kind of blockchain. And it's funny that we've started with ownership. So I have a question here, which seems to summarize.
Please, can I say something before moving on?
Sure.
Because I think
would I be able to add one point? It's more the fact that recently, for instance, so I found out that a Basquiat is going to be going on sale and as an NFT, and that the ultimate owner would then be given an option to destroy the original, which for me is a bit horrific.
Yes, me too. I completely agree. There's a lot of stupid shenanigans that people are testing out and doing horrific, tasteless things in order to get attention. I couldn't agree with you more. But just to go back a little bit, let's look at the start of computers, which is a few fair decades ago. And it's when the computers really arrived, we already started getting digital creativity. And let's face it, the art world hasn't paid attention to most of that digital creative output because there wasn't a way to monetize it. So they couldn't make money out of it. So they kind of pushed it aside. And now let's call it 60 decades of this creativity is now all of a sudden becomes available due to the invention of Bitcoin. Because many people say that, oh, what am I buying? A JPEG image? Everyone can see it and I can just right click and save and blah, blah. What's the big deal? But let's say you go on the internet and you right click and save a picture of a Bitcoin. And you put it onto your desktop. Good luck trying to get the whatever $55,000 it's worth on a marketplace that is secured by the technology underneath the logo of Bitcoin in order for you to kind of get it onto your bank account. So this same technology is now verifying this pent-up creativity that it's taken 60 years for us to develop the technology in order to monetize it, that if I upload an image somewhere and it's enjoyed by, let's say, the whole of the world, I can make sure with this technology, much like with Bitcoin, that I can assign a value to it in a way that you can cash it out under the marketplace laws. And of course, my own reputation as a digital creative for 20 years is behind it. So it's not a big incentive for me to upload it then somewhere else and get caught and destroy my whole life's work. So many of the kind of psychology things now start to come into play, especially when we start to look at the metaverse. And the metaverse are these virtual reality worlds where you can now, with this innovation, own digital land, digital buildings, and you can put your art onto these digital buildings, and you can have meetups all over the world with millions and millions of people to come to an event or a concert or something like that you can tokenize as an NFT, either the ticket. And the same psychology thing, when you go into, well, this is funny because this actually happened to me. I thought it was the dumbest thing of all time that someone would pay for virtual sneakers more than you would pay for expensive Nikes on a store. Now, I go to my first Crypto Voxels meetup, and there's a whole bunch of other artists who are from the early crypto scene, like Coldy and whatever. And I saw their avatars, and they're got boom boxes on their heads and the sneakers and cool capes and everything. And then I see myself, as my name is above myself, but I'm just this puppet little nude dude, and all of a sudden everyone's there looking at me, and I've got no swag whatsoever. I don't have any kind of presence or identity in this world at all. And right at that moment it clicked. The same psychology of why people would own anything in the physical world, want to impress other people or show their status or just show their taste or have their collections and ownership and all of these kinds of things of what we see in the real world, are now transferring one-to-one, or if not with steroids on top, into the virtual reality. And there you can immediately show that this is not a picture of, well, it won't be Mona Lisa, even though that's been tokenized as a one of one. I believe the first time it was tried was by Orion Vault, that they got permission from the Louvre to have the unique Mona Lisa as a digital identity, but the company collapsed and whatever happened with that. But you can showcase with a script that this is the real thing. This is not just the JPEG that everyone can have on their wall. This is the real thing, and here's the authentication that that's how that's real. So maybe that's just a few points of the value aspect.
But you talked about avatar, and that brings me to my second point: is how we now are we going to become, avatars, in the sense that we are progressing into a world. I mean, this is the bigger question that I have, which is that, and I'd love to understand more, because I think it comes also from a place of you need to understand something a bit more. But as we know, blockchain is as a system is more than Bitcoin or crypto. Currency is only one element. So the thing is, everything may in time become tokenized, an asset. The token may relate to a fiat currency, but it could be a right. It could be an IP right, it could be any other kind of right, it could be a piece of information. The goal is that everything about you in the smart environment will be tracked, okay? So people will know how many times, it will be known, let's say, how many times you deal with an NFT token, or whether it's related to an artwork or not. So it will be sold as private, right? But for instance, do we even want to be part of this spatial sphere? I mean, I don't know if you guys know about the MIT Enigma protocol, but this was back in the time. I mean, the ship has sailed. It's not even the last year or two, but this has been going on.
Noor, I'd hate to interrupt you. You seem very enthusiastic about the subject, but also within the crypto sphere, there are privacy coins, and there are privacy, mechanisms that you can use, like future-proof privacy. You have zero knowledge proof. There's a lot of other, quantum proof also chains and things like that. But there is a mix. Again, even in this virtual world, privacy is preserved through different technical means as well. And metaverses, they have mansions, and they have private spaces as well, and things like that. So there is a mix, like you have there in the real world, a mix of private and public things. You have private coins and private mechanisms and transactions and things like that as well. So there is actually a balance there as well. And this is the beauty of this open market and this alternative reality and alternative, economic system. You have a bit of everything, and whatever is not there, whatever is not fulfilled, a niche that somebody finds, you bet that you're going to find somebody that will fulfill that niche, because people want to have these kind of swags. They want to have this kind of presence in this world. They want to own the biggest mansion. They want to have fastest cars in this virtual world, just like we do in real life.
So thanks for that. I want to zoom out from that kind of technical discussion, and I agree with the discussion of the swag in the virtual and the allure of the virtual, and that's something that Vis has written a lot about. And I have two questions for you as an artist. I think the first is, are we destroying the romance and the allure that is associated with the Mona Lisa, with the Louvre, with the existing art world? And is that behind part of the debate we're having today? And the second question for you as an artist is that you've written about art for the internet. So you kind of implied that it's no longer the church, it's no longer the media, it's no longer Wall Street that is dictating some of this push towards crypto art. Instead, it's the users and the mega communities of cyberspace, which is something that Dr. Marwan just referenced. This new community, this new global reality that we're all part of. And is that where the action is? Is that where the romance is? Is that where the new domain is that we all need to start talking about and accepting?
Well, to your first point, brilliant questions, by the way. The first point is that I've said to many artists before that if you can explain the way the mystery from your art, it wasn't there to begin with. Because I don't think words or videos or whatever brain dances you can do about it won't be enough if you've done your job right. And when it comes to this bigger mega community type of thing, first of all, I'm really happy to see, having been in the crypto art space for 4 years and seeing the humble beginnings of it, to see people like yourself, Noor, to come along, because I have been waiting for the adults to come on board for about 4 years now. There's been quite a lot of things that have been going on under the guise of art that I would say wouldn't pass as such and shouldn't be even discussed in that sort of breath, as much that is the postmodern condition. But the real big picture for me is that NFTs truly are a liberation of a whole creative class of people. Because you can be a designer of fonts or a drummer, you can be a visual artist, you could be whatever it is that you can, if your output is a digital file, and let's say before, even if you were a high level 3D render animator working for Disney or Pixar or something like that, and you might have had a dream of doing your own little furry animal that you thought was really funny and quirky, but you couldn't pass it through the big corporate ladder towards becoming the next Monsters Inc. or something like that. Now you can just, with your spare time, make that animation and render and a quick little story that takes you maybe an afternoon and put it directly onto the marketplace, cutting the corporate structure, the sort of incentive structure of all the different ways that artists have had to submit themselves to try and get their grants in order to get their work funded. So let's say it's a liberation of having to, at least here in Finland, when I started, it was a clear thing that if you weren't politically aligned with a super narrow bandwidth, you had no position whatsoever. And in my case, because I wanted to make holistic art altogether that commented upon a variety of things, including spirituality, as well as politics and sociology and these kinds of things, I was immediately put out from that whole thing. Yeah. So now what this is everyone has their ability to come onto this marketplace and test it out. Now, here's where the challenge is. From my perspective, because art for the past 50 years has pretty much, as what I call fiat art, been fancy things for the rich, these glitzy things that started with Warhol, maybe going to Koons and Damien Hirst and so forth, or then the postmodern, let's say, political, very narrow bandwidth propaganda. And I would say those are the two flip sides of the coin that the art has been able to exist in, leaving out body painting, ancient Egypt, all the wonders of South America, the Enlightenment, sciences, just about everything that it has sort of, even though it says it's inclusive, has been left out. So now with NFTs, you get to come to the market with all of this stuff, but you don't have a very well educated public about what art is or what it could be or what has been done before, even among the academia, because as far as I understand, the majority of it has been focusing on everything pretty much that came after, let's say, 1970, and that would be the time when Richard Nixon actually took out the gold from underneath the gold standard, and that reflected in art into the Warholian kind of factory type of mind setting that led to these two forks, which eventually is the fancy things for the rich as well as the political propaganda. So this is why I see as so hopeful and so wonderful, is that this does truly liberate the whole of the creative spectrum to express themselves as they want, to see if there is a marketplace for what they want to output, and people that might have not had a voice or a place to put their creativity onto somewhere and feel free to express it, now have an avenue to do so. And this is why I'm so excited about it all.
So I've got a way to bracket that for you, Noor, because I think a good direction to take this in is we have two revolutions here that we've discussed. Dr. Marwan has introduced us to the sophisticated technical revolution. Vesa has told us about a revolution that's not just of technology, but is also a revolution that's hopefully more decentralized, more open to cyberspace, less beholden to kind of elite financial and cultural structures that have bound us in the past. The question for you, I suppose, would be, is this a revolution of the academy? Do you really believe this will change the art market or change what you do in 5 years' time? Or do you think there are significant challenges and questions still there, and that the piece of art on the wall will never really be able to compare to the kind of, you know, digital creativity that NFTs will hopefully empower in cyberspace?
No, I mean, I think I was quite interested in what Besa said. I think it's very evident that there are those artists who can exploit this space and who have an understanding and a sophistication, and those who do need those intermediaries that may abuse them but may also protect them. So in the traditional artwork market, you have the big galleries and the Gagosians and the auction houses and the art and the advisors, and in many ways it democratizes it to take them out. But at the same time, sometimes their presence allows certain unsophisticated artists to be able to reach a wider audience. Now, I think the digital space is just another addition. It's not it will always be there. It's another layer. What did people say when video art came out? They didn't understand it, and now it's part of the grain. So I don't think it's more the what you're selling. I think it's more the how. It's you're taking out the middleman. It's like forgetting Uber. It's like removing the Uber from the Uber drivers and allowing the drivers just to kind of go out there into the world. It's kind of the same thing as for the NFT. You are able to mint, you have control of everything. I think it's very, very useful, especially for new art. I think the old master, let's leave aside the artworks of artists who have long passed, the Impressionists, the old masters. There's complications there because, for instance, minting an NFT in relation to, say, Da Vinci, which then turns out to be disputed, and then it's quite difficult. But new up and coming artists who are frustrated with how the world works, and I do think that it can democratize. But I do think it takes artists such as Besa who understand it to really be able to exploit it. I mean, one thing to know is, for instance, in the traditional art market, you have artist resale rights. So the artist is protected every time their artwork is resold in certain jurisdictions. They get a percentage of the profits every time in the secondary market an artwork is resold. So that protects them. So if something is then flipped.
Same in the digital world. That's what I was explaining. You can do that actually in the smart contract as well. So you can enforce it digitally. Right.
So I think the enforceability is difficult in the digital world in that sense. I think sometimes
it's automated.
It's actually the other way around. It's actually built in. So it is actually more protected than the traditional world.
Okay, well, I have read otherwise in certain aspects in the resale. I mean, maybe, hopefully, but all I'm saying is that I think that John, you mentioned we talked about this actually on our Clubhouse chat. There's two different spheres. There's the new, there's the Silicon Valley now, which is jumping behind, these are the collectors and they understand this market. And then you've got the traditional art world. But at the same time, these are two still small, powerful spheres of people at the top, a small handful. So you're swapping one group with another, and they don't necessarily mix. And so that's my...
We do have that question. Thanks for bringing that up, Noel. So Besa, just to there's always been two arguments, as Dr. Malin will know as well, within the blockchain community. And one is the kind of John McAfee, this is the future of the global financial system, that nothing will ever be the same. And the other is more a hybrid approach. And we might have the same in the art world, because one of the things myself and Noor have discussed in the past was Silicon Valley was originally, the idea was it would set us all free. And instead today, if you look at cyberspace, we have walled gardens, we have demonetization, we have deplatforming, and we also have studies showing that often technology has accelerated inequality rather than increased it. So while I have a massive amount of sympathy for a lot of Besa's criticisms of the existing art establishment and financial systems, isn't there also that worry that the new kind of technocratic elites will simply co-opt these systems to create a new NFT art market that is just...
Oh, they already have. They did it 2 years ago already.
Wow.
I mean, this is the funny thing of how what I call the fiat art phenomena has been repeating itself for a little bit. I mean, my favorite art critic of all time, who I'm still trying to get in touch with, is Camille Paglia. And she's a very, very interesting lady because she's a first wave feminist. She identified as a transgender already in the 80s. She's lesbian. She's a lifelong Democrat. She's all of these strange things, but because she has critiqued the feminist movement and she has critiqued some of the political things that happened with identity politics and many different kinds of things, even though she fits all the brackets of, let's say, what the current inclusion sort of speak is, that she's been excluded out of it because she didn't say all the right things correctly, even though she has all the points even in the new system to speak as such. So, and she speaks about spirituality, of even though she's an atheist, she herself thinks that if you want to get an art education, you cannot go bypass religion. You have to understand world religions and their context and their sort of relevance to art, of how it was born to begin with. And I've actually written articles myself about what to these new digital artists and this new realm, the legacy art world, let's say from ancient Egypt and beyond, would bring to their creativity. Because what happened a couple of years ago is that a lot of these technocrats, when they came along, and they're some of the smartest guys in the room, very wealthy, very alpha kind of driven people and everything, and they know their stuff, but they didn't necessarily have any education in art whatsoever, nor was art the priority. The priority was to birth a new marketplace, to have these platforms and get use cases for them and actually showcase crypto in many different ways as opposed to art. So art in this new thing was again at the bottom of the priority. And then they started to what looked genius to them was actually to someone like Noor or Dr. Marwan, with your expertise, would have looked like, hey, hold on a minute, this has been done 100 times before and even better. And there was actually a point of why it was done so simplistically before. And now it's all of a sudden hailed as genius by guys who are accustomed to being right and generally very smart, but didn't actually know what they were pumping up as very valuable. And I would say it's also because they wanted some very easy artists to prop up so that they wouldn't sort of say anything controversial to their actual agenda, which was to birth the platforms and the marketplace. So I would say currently the NFT marketplace of what the price of what is quite skewed, even though there are some phenomenal artists who deserve to be at the top and making all of that different kind of money and the prestige. But it's a very, very difficult minefield. And because now it's with the trader people and they just look at the numbers. They don't actually look at the creativity output or the career or the kinds of accomplishments or those kinds of things. So this is why I'm in particular very happy to have this conversation with you, Noor, and seeing that people like yourselves are coming along just to even ask the question of what's going on here, because your expertise certainly is needed. And I think before it can grow into adult shoes and the true real money to come along as a sustainable kind of investment class of things, we do need the middlemen. We do need those who have a much wider perspective of what creativity has been for thousands of years and what birthed its value to begin with.
And an example is Christie's. Christie's doesn't quite know, can't get its head around, and yet they basically had Beeple, the reason that the Beeple artwork came on and achieved such a phenomenal fee was cost because it was in a Christie's auction. So they kind of worked in tandem there.
That's interesting. So based on, I'm conscious of time, but I wanted to kind of draw out that distinction on the fine art and possibly NFT art with Dr. Marwan. So Dr. Marwan, do you think art as an investment, as an asset class, as an NFT can be successful in the future? And do you think this model, second question, is going to filter into other creative industries such as film or VR or other cultural, content?
I think it already is, as Vesa mentioned earlier. So whatever you think is it going to become, it has already become. So NFT is already an alternative marketplace. Already some artists in Africa and India and some other places in the world that had no audience for their art pieces, the digital art pieces, have already all of a sudden found people who would not only buy them but will collect them. What we have seen, and this is again what Vesa mentioned, that it is actually skewed right now. So we and the people who are buying right now, they want to buy first offs, so first editions of arts in every kind of category. And you have to understand, this is not only the art world going in. This is actually attracting collectors as well. And every collector wants to have either the first or the last ever art made by or drop that was made by a certain artist, or the biggest in the case of Beeple, where you have the first 5,000 days. There's never going to be another first 5,000 days, you know, of people. And this is the uniqueness of the offering that the collectors are attracted to. But that's not limited to art. It's collectible, limited to 3D, you know, collectibles, limited to interactive experiences with VR, and includes cards, virtual cards being collected. And some of them are going very smartly to bigger marketplaces to showcase there, to get more eyes on the pieces of art. And, you know, they're doing some marketing things that are making these things more valuable, like limited time drops, for example, 5 minutes only. And that creates, you know, this buzz that you only have 5 minutes to buy this piece of art, and then it's gone forever, you know. And these kind of things and marketing schemes really bring this skewed kind of value for the actual piece of art that otherwise would be much less valued, as you mentioned, with Christie's and things like that as well.
Well, Victor, Marwan, what you just said is exactly this is it. Okay, the first and the last. Okay, it's not limited to NFT. It's not limited to crypto. It's not limited to traditional art world. It is human nature. It is the human psychology of people to want to have something rare, something limited, something new, something, you know. So I mean, a while ago,
it's a land rush.
I ask people, I think, what would you rather have? Would you rather have Beeple? Would you rather pay 69 million for the Beeple work? Or would you rather pay 450 million for a work that isn't even really said to be, it's alleged to be 90% painted not by Leonardo da Vinci. We're talking about the Salvator Mundi here. So lots of criticism has been leveled. I'm not going to give a view because I'm not, you know, a restorer or a Da Vinci expert. But it has been said by many in the traditional artwork that this work was maybe 1% by Da Vinci and the rest was restored. But
you have to understand.
But it's the last Da Vinci in circulation, and so there is the cachet. We want to have the last, the first, the whatever, the you know, 5 seconds. I mean, right now, not even artwork, but you can pay for the last, you know, that somebody hits a winning shot in a football net, and that footage is
that's already there.
that's been sold. And it's kind of like, you know, and you said another word, which is marketing. It's marketing. So the Salvator Mundi, the hype and the marketing that went behind it, the National Gallery was persuaded to show it, even if it was, I mean, the Louvre didn't accept it in its Leonardo da Vinci exhibition, but the National Gallery prior to the auction showed the work. So in both aspects, you have the marketing playing on the human nature, wanting to have this best thing.
But you're forgetting something as well, Nora. I have to interrupt you, but you're forgetting something as well here. So all the people in this space, all the people in the crypto space are millionaires or billionaires that they had nothing before. Even the guy that bought the Beeple piece of art, he had nothing. He didn't even have money to buy a computer. Now he has money to you know, to buy digital art.
There you that's another really relevant point, because for instance, who is it? The Winklevoss brothers, who then invested in Bitcoin, and then they sold the company or something. Oh yeah, the guys sold their company to the Winklevoss brothers. I don't know enough.
No. They're just early investors in Bitcoin.
But we're talking about investors who made a lot of money. Let's say an example. I don't know, but like who made a lot of money in the Bitcoin world, and so they're millionaires. So they're sitting in that level that John and I were talking about, the same place that those people, the high-end collectors in the very, very small percentage in the traditional art world sit. They're in a different stratosphere. So 69 million for a Beeple work is really nothing, right?
There's that dimension as well, and there's also their investment mindset is totally different than the traditional investor. We're living in two alternative economies here. You have to realize that there is the real life economy where you make 3 to 5% a day in the traditional, maybe not a day, sorry, a year. So in real estate, for example, you make 13% a year. You know how much you make a day in crypto? Maybe 25, 35 is normal in a day in the crypto world. And you know, getting 10 times 100 times, 1,000 times your initial investment in crypto is considered normal. And some people complain even if they get 30% a day, saying that this is actually a scam or a hoax in the crypto world. So you have to understand, this is a totally different economic system. The incentives are totally different. The reward scheme is totally different. And when you add art and collectibles and this human nature of wanting to be the first, and this fear of missing out, and fear and uncertainty, you really introduce this dynamic, really exciting, at the same time dangerous kind of marketplace. And of course, people who know how to deal with it, whether they are artists, collectors, how to deal with human psychology and that kind of stuff, will actually benefit. But people who are new to this, they will get really damaged financially. They might buy a piece of art that's $50,000 that was worth not even $5. And they might get stuck with it. They might buy a piece of land, not knowing the dynamics of that, metasphere that they're in, and they might be losing a lot of money in it. It's really important here to educate yourself about the space, educate what dictates value and what really you are buying and what you are trying to invest in. Because end of the day, a lot of people who get into this NFT space are there for investment. Like Vesa said, they're not there to appreciate the art, but it will bring attention to this kind of art. And yes, there will be the legitimate, artists and legitimate investors that are actually in the space for the right reasons.
So guys, very interesting time, but just want to, there's three questions I think we can tie this up that pretty much involve everyone. I think the first is a discussion on galleries and what happens with this, who accesses this art. The second is this financial language that we're all using. And I think those are two things that we can perhaps tie this conversation up with today. But before we do, we have a quick question that I think Noor will be able to answer fairly well, which comes from Sam. And that is you've seen that, Noor?
I was going to say that's an interesting question. Yeah. He says the tokenization of physical art via NFTs would help tracking the provenance of the artwork. By doing so, wouldn't you agree NFTs are the future of the art market? So I think
just before you answer, Noor, I have to run. I apologize. I have to break my fast, and I have another appointment right afterwards. So I apologize for that.
What's in, really Dr. Marwan?
Nice to meet you, everyone.
تقبل الله صيامك.
Thank you. Shukran.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Provenance, of course, being the information that allows you to prove that this artwork was basically owned by this specific family, and that where did it originate from, and what its history is. I think that the NFT part is only like it facilitates it in the sense that once it's on the chain, nothing can tamper with that, but it's only as good as the information you put on it. I mean, in many cases, there is no provenance. There are very little provenance. I mean, if you're talking about some works that are centuries old, it's going to be difficult to put together that provenance. Some information arises afterwards, and then sometimes the records and history have been manipulated. So I think a database is only as good as the information you put on it, right? I mean, is that the Botticelli, for instance, that was sold at auction for 92 million, I think, in New York earlier this year. For a whole period of time, there are no records that show what happened to it, or who was it held, or who commissioned, who commissioned it even. And so it really depends on the nature of the information you put onto the blockchain, I think, in terms of provenance.
Okay, so thanks.
There is one thing that just happened with me, which is that I on the BTC chain via a service called Verisart, I certified a physical piece that I made. And the first thing that the collector asked is, can I sell this certificate as a separate NFT to my collectors? So I was like, dude, no, but I can't control it.
Vesa, that sometimes in the art world, the traditional art world, fake pieces have been aligned with true authentication certificates.
Right.
So even like fake works of whatever, Turner, so this is a thing, authentication boards are refusing to authenticate sometimes because you don't know what's going to happen with the actual you know, that they are being manipulated in themselves. And there are certificates that are correct, that are true, but the actual underlying works are false. So yeah, in that sense, I think that would help, because you're in control right now. You're producing it now. You're in control from this point onwards. But in terms of older works, I think it's difficult to say, you know, the NFT. But I think definitely Sam has a point for new works, and you've got to be scrupulous yourself. So I mean, I guess you as an artist are a scrupulous artist, so I think it affects your
sure. I mean, to a fault, because I think in 2019 I gave my first keynote on which sort of exposed something of the traditional art world, which was that I said that this Miami banana was obviously done in a way that the gallery paid someone to come and pay the $150,000 because it's so obvious. I mean, I can't say that for 100% that to be the case, but of course, I mean, so they can then sell this insult piece of news to the world and inflate even the old name of art even worse, because everyone goes like, what the hell just happened? And then they get this millions and millions worth of press all over, and then they get to sell that artist for a lot more because his banana sold for 150,000. Right. Now, what the industry's dirty secret right now, which has made me in some circles very unpopular, is that I've said that all it takes for me to do some very fishy things right now in crypto is that let's say I have my MetaMask wallet and it's associated with some of my art. And let's say, Noor, you have an extra $4 million lying around in your MetaMask, and we make an agreement that how about you send me that $4 million into my MetaMask, and then we tell the press that I just sold an art piece to you for $4 million. And then we have agreed that I wait for a little bit, and then I open up another MetaMask address, and after I don't know, some months I transfer it over to another MetaMask address and you start your own. And then after a while, we sort of bounce it back to you. And then all of my catalog is worth a different thing altogether. And that happened with no effort and cost, nor regulation whatsoever. But I come back to this problem that you said, Noor, before, which is that it's human nature. And we have this thing that is not bound by technology or psychology or rules or whatever it is. Human nature just finds a way to do these kinds of things. And then some of us who are dumb enough to say things out loud and try and play fair, we might even get excluded from the early beginnings of a movement that we've created a little bit. So there's things like these that happen.
But you've got to be true to your values, right? If you're consistent, the banana will make news today and it will be forgotten tomorrow. But if you're an artist who's consistent in your practice and you say the same thing and the same message to everybody and you stay true to those values, I think that kind of value will continue.
Right. So guys, we've got about 4 minutes left, but just very quickly, and that was a great example of being able to inflate prices through the blockchain, which I've never heard of. So thanks for that, Bessa. Two
it's
questions.
Pretty much how I think the market was created by some people.
So two questions before we finish up. And one is on a slightly personal note. We've talked a lot about public space and access. And I know, Bessa, you've written a bit about how the media system that funds and pushes art will crash alongside the financial system. I'm a big, I like modern art, I like contemporary art, but the place I like viewing art most is actually Italy, where anyone can walk around an Italian town and go into any one of the cathedrals or churches and often see a masterwork. And these masterworks are part of public consciousness. They are tied to the history and the culture. Now, this isn't an argument for religious art. It's a discussion on public space and an argument about, who art should target and who it should belong to. And that seems to be one of the major things that you've been talking about as an artist and one of the currents behind this NFT movement. So we do have a question from a panelist asking about galleries. I just wanted to broaden that a bit to who is the public audience for NFTs? Because we know we've discussed it from the perspective of creators, but what about the perspective of people who want to view this art, who want to be part of this movement?
Well, I would say, allow me to take this back just a little bit to maybe make sense of how to come around it, and I'll try and make it as short as possible. But to me, what creativity means and why I'm I don't consider myself to be a religious person, but I've had these kinds of experiences of connection. And what I believe religion as a word to begin with means is to connect to something higher. And this is something as simple as people saying that they have a writer's block or they're not creative or whatever it is. And in reality, what that means is that they have an inability to connect with the creation around them that is in constant evolution and create sort of rebirth and death at the same time, all the time. And this is what some of the original religious art was trying to kind of get to, and what you can connect to when you go to Italy and you go into these masterworks. This is what these artists were trying to bridge, is the gap in between you as an individual or as an encapsulated ego and the creation itself, to work as a medium in order for everyone to have these transcendent experiences and get these profound things of belonging into a world as opposed to being separate from it. And I think this was the very, very beginning of art via, arguably it was body painting or cave painting that were the first ones. Either we ritualistically painted each other to try and reach a state of mind, or then leave a mark on the wall of something that was valuable about our culture. And I think the past 50 years of postmodernism and these bananas and piss Christ and all of these insulty things that are very much to do with this degradation of value, or this tradition of what birthed the value of art to begin with, even though of course it's important for us to purge our demons and do these kinds of things that many of these wonderful artists of recent decades have done as well. But NFTs, because if you have bold enough artists who can reclaim their own creativity and connection and teach to people how to find their own creativity or their own connection to the world, which art is just one medium, they are the audience. Find those artists who are bold enough to do it. And if you get something out of them, support them. And because that is the new world that we desperately need. We can't have anymore the global education system hierarchy in mathematics and sort of producing a certain kind of mentality where creativity is always at the bottom globally, bizarrely, at a time when we have all of these crises all over the world and we need human creativity, perhaps even to merge with AI in order for us to get out of all of this trouble that we're in. So this is why I see it as such an important thing to find the pioneers and help them become a part of the conversation. Art is important, but it's only a slice of life. And it's only an important slice of life if it connects to all the different kinds of other things. Like, for example, I speak that NFTs should maybe become the new way that the STEM research all over the world globally gets funded or peer reviewed. There's such an amount of opportunity with these things and utilizing smart contracts that it's unheard of. And some of these are unfortunate. The first phenomena that we now see, and rightfully so, everyone is raising their eyebrows of what the hell is going on, but it will subdue and it will do its bear market, and then another run and another wave of experts and people who really know what they're doing will come along and it will stabilize.
So I think we'll wrap it up there, but thanks everyone.
But John, just before I go, I agree. I just wanted to say I agree with Vesa in that, and I guess this is something I wanted to say, is that whatever period we're in, there will always be people taking advantage. There will always be good art and there will always be bad art. And there will always be something new that people are skeptical about because they don't understand it. I'm sure that happened when prints came along and people are saying, why are we making prints of things? You know, all of that. But I think that he's right in the sense that you're right, Vesa, that you need to find the pioneers and you need to find the people who are the authentic people in these organizations, and just and as hard as it is, not to succumb to the easy route.
So very, very, very quick question before you both go. In the past, we spoke of creation, inspiration, and genius. Today, artists like Vesa are borrowing the market of the language of the market in Silicon Valley to talk about innovation. So my question is this a good thing, or is software eating the art market? Noah, what do you think?
I think that it can be a good thing in the right hands, and a bad thing in the wrong hands.
That makes sense. And Vesa, what about you?
I think I'm all talked out.
Well, who knows? Is software eating the art market? I guess we'll find out. And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.